I think the word important is important here. All right. So in this question, what are the 5 most important pass catchers on this team? And I think for everybody, their number one guy is your most important, right? Like this is where our offense starts. If we're going to sit here and say his importance is based on how many catches he has, that's not necessarily what I'm going after here, because we could just look at it and be like, well, I guess these guys are going to catch this many, but the importance of those catches is where this kind of starts. So who are the guys that you're like, they have to make these catches and they have to make these certain types of catches? You could say like Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup is going to be relied on as a possession type guy. When it's third down, everybody's supposed to double team CeeDee Lamb. Of course, you want to scheme him open, but can Michael Gallup make the third down grab? Those are the kinds of things that I wanted to kind of go after here with this question. And I'm getting excited about football season as I got a fantasy draft this weekend.
Starts in 8 days.
I know, dude. I know, and I'm looking forward to hosting a party starting on Sunday the 10th, I do believe. Is that when football season starts for us, Kevin?
For the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Or is it the 11th?
We'll see. We'll see how it all works out. It all pans out and everything. But I wanted to kind of know who y'all think is the most important, because is Brandon Cooks the second most important receiver to everybody out there? Or is there somebody else that you're like, no, it's this guy?
So I have CeeDee and Brandon Cooks 1 and 2. I wonder if my list will deviate from a lot of folks after that.
Okay.
But for 1 and 2, I guess I went chalk, for lack of a better term, just because CeeDee Lamb makes sense, because he's your franchise wide receiver, or however you want to describe it. And Brandon Cooks, man, I know preseason doesn't do a lot for a lot of folks, but just watching that connection in training camp, like up close in person, like we got to, your mind runs wild about the ability to stretch the field offensively. And I know before people push back and they're like, who's going to get him the ball? Trust me, we saw Dak and Cooks connect many, many, many times in training camp. I don't know how to look in the game, but the preview of it looked awesome.
Yeah, and that like could be a really fun feature that we didn't get to see during the preseason at all. Is like we didn't get to see that connection one single time during the preseason because they said we're not starting those guys.
Right.
But the what we saw in training camp, how he got open, the speed that he can get open with. I do wonder sometimes, Mike brings this question up whenever we're out there. Mike McCarthy knows the defenses that Dan Quinn's running. Most of the defenses in the league are running similar kinds of things, right? But Mike McCarthy knows how to expose those things. Is he calling plays to make guys feel better about themselves because he knows how to beat that defense? Or is he calling them because these are the kind of things that are going to beat opponents' defenses down the road? That's what you're hoping for, is that McCarthy's doing that because he's getting wins during the regular season.
Are you going to copy my top two?
My top two are definitely Lamb and Cooks. I have been struggling, though, because Pollard's my number 3. And the reason I'm struggling, because I want to put Pollard 2.
Okay.
But I think the simple threat of the deep ball for Brandon Cooks that we saw over and over and time again, there have been so many times where Dak doesn't know how to judge the speed of a receiver that he's throwing deep to, and you're kind of like, okay, what? He just kind of puts it up there and hopes, This with Brandon Cooks, he's going to outrun the guy. I just got to throw it as far as I can. That threat hasn't been here for a while.
Sure.
And like that threat, he hasn't given him enough air under the ball to make it happen. That threat just hasn't been a real threat. Yes, we saw the play with T.Y. Hilton happen last year. That was a play that happened last year. I think you can do that multiple times with Brandon Cooks rather than it being something that you're like, oh, we saw a flash of something. And you can threaten almost every game with him.
Okay, Mike, is it Lamb and Cooks 1 and 2 for you as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think those are the easiest ones.
And because my answer for 3 is different than yours. Who do you put third on the list then?
I put Gallup / Tolbert because I don't know who's ultimately going to be the number 3 receiver.
I think it's gonna be Gallup. I think Tolbert will have his opportunities for sure. And Mike, like we discussed with Sam Williams, or when we were talking about his playing time, injuries happen. Injuries are like one of the best things the Cowboys did, Kevin, was in case of injury to CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah,
they have a Brandon Cooks,
sure.
So your level is still pretty good.
Now, The person who texted in from the 214 is a genius. The tight end needs to be third. Third on my list is Jake Ferguson. All right. So I really thought about this in terms.
Is that why we had a Jake Ferguson highlight?
Yes.
Interesting.
Might have tipped my hand right
Interesting.
there. Is just because I think about the things that y'all said makes a lot of sense to me, but I just think about the consistent safety blanket, which feels like a negative term at times, was Dalton Schultz. And if you can take it to somebody like Jake Ferguson, who can maybe, I'm not saying he's going to break the game open, but maybe he opens the field up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a vitally important role. So after CeeDee and Brandon Cooks, I'm going Jake Ferguson as my third.
All right. Something that I saw over and over. The reason I'm going with Pollard as my third, and it could be Deuce Vaughn too. Like whoever that guy is in short, let's say they're in the within 10 yards of the end zone.
I mean, I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't use Pollard if you were going to go Vaughn.
I just everything that I saw, Kevin, with their offense in the within 10 yards at camp, they love going to the flats. That was something Mike McCarthy was calling frequently, and no matter who the running back was, they were scoring touchdowns in the red zone based on that. So that is a play that I think is going to be vitally important, because what did Mickey say a couple weeks, maybe it was last week, when he was talking about Zeke not being there in short yardage situations? They don't have a guy that can do that. I'm sure they can figure out how to get some short yardage downs. Lukey will be one of them for you. But the flats with the receiving running backs, those were essential. And I also think they can be big factors if they can get a semblance of a screen game going.
I do have Paul. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, and that's why I have Pollard 4. So I'm going Lamb, Cooks, Ferguson, Pollard.
Okay.
For my top 4.
How many? I need to go look this up, because I want to know what the most receiving yards for a running back in a single season is.
Oh,
and
okay.
I got to find that. Somebody probably out there knows, and they're like, yeah, I had him in this fantasy year, and they remember it, but I don't.
Don't you feel like automatically?
Feels like a Marshall Faulk or a Alvin Kamara or somebody like that.
That's exactly what I thought. And last year, Pollard was a touch below 400 yards with 3 touchdowns.
Okay.
And so let's say it was like 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Well, hopefully that means the offense is clicking on all cylinders, and not that you're struggling to throw touchdowns.
Yeah, hopefully his rushing yards are up, because late in the game
receiver.
he's able to rush a lot more.
Some of these are interesting from the 682. Lamb, Cooks, Gallup, Vaughn, and Turpin. So they really think we are going to switch it up from the 469. They go CeeDee, Gallup, Ferguson, Cooks, Pollard. From the 214, they went Cooks, Ferguson, Gallup, Pollard after CeeDee Lamb to finish out their top 5. And so, yeah, my top 5, I'm going CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, Tony Pollard, and Michael Gallup.
I got Gallup 4.
Okay, so we're not too far
and
off.
Ferguson 5. And my reason is, like, I know Dak loves tight ends. He loves tight ends, dude.
Who doesn't?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But he is one of those guys that as he's had a tight end here, he has utilized that tight end in many different facets. Like he trusts that they're open. And Mike, one of the things that you and I both believe about Dak Prescott, he likes to know that the receiver's open before he throws to him. That's one of the things that we've kind of been looking at. I know people will be like, what about this throw? And you're like, yeah, okay. Most of the throws he would prefer.
Can we talk about that for just 1 second, Corey? I don't want to throw off your train of thought.
Absolutely.
But that's one of the weirdest things in social media is when somebody makes a blanket statement about a huge arc of time and someone responds with a singular play.
Yeah.
And I'm like, does that discount their larger point?
Yeah, I guess I don't think it does, but I think that, and you can say you can show me a lot of them, but man, one of the great assets that Tony Romo did have was anticipation of when a guy would be open or when he would break open. And sometimes it bit him in the butt, because he would, say, I expect that guy to be there, but his anticipation was that way. And sometimes I feel like Dak is kind of holding on. Now, this year's offense could be different. Like this year's offense could be, and Mike was just talking about it, getting the ball out a lot quicker. Maybe Dak doesn't have as much time to think, and he has just trust that it's going to be open at times. But I think the tight end is just what I remember with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. You're always like, man, I got to get this tight end this year for this season, because he's going to be awesome. And then he never was. But I think that third receiver in Gallup can do a lot with the drag routes, and especially with all these slants.
In the 903, once the deuce is let loose, Pollard will be an afterthought. Hey, that's exactly what the Cowboys would want, right?
Absolutely.
Because you have Tony Pollard on a franchise tag. If you could tell me we got this rookie for 3 years after this for almost nothing,
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Well, hold on. Is that you saying that, or is that what you think the Cowboys believe?
I think it is.
Because don't you want Tony Pollard to be great forever?
I think that they don't, because Tony Pollard costs money. Every time I hear, and look, I'm going to point this out. This is probably unfair. I have no specific numbers, but every time I hear the Cowboys offered somebody a contract extension, I was like, you know what? I bet they did. I bet they went to Tony Pollard and said, 3 years, $15 million. What do you say? And they're like, no. And they're like, well, we tried.
We tried.
And so
we did everything we could.
I believe 1,000,000% the Cowboys would much rather pay Deuce Vaughn like upwards of $1 million going forward for the next 3 years and be like, great, let's go spend money in all these other places.